So this is a tutorial for homework 8-3. We'll start with question 1. Garden Depot is a retailer that is preparing its budget for the upcoming fiscal year. Management has prepared the following summary of its budgeted cash flows. And so here's the information they gave me for each quarter: total cash receipts and total cash disbursements. The company's beginning cash balance for the upcoming fiscal year will be $42,000. The company requires a minimum cash balance of $10,000 and may borrow any amount needed from a local bank at a quarterly interest rate of 3%. The company may borrow any amount at the beginning of any quarter and may repay its loans or any part of its loans at the end of any quarter. Interest payments are due on any principal at the time it is repaid. For simplicity, assume that interest is not compounded. Required: prepare the company's cash budget for the upcoming fiscal year. Repayments, interest, and cash deficiencies should be indicated with a minus sign. So make sure when you're entering this in to McGraw-Hill that if it's a negative, then you put a minus sign in front of it. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull out all of the data. So my first quarter, second quarter, whoops, typo. Be careful with your typos because it'll mess up your whole chart. Okay, so as you can see, I got that data up here, 29,000. I'm just gonna do a quick double check and make sure that I did all of my numbers right. Okay, now for the numbers in the words. My beginning cash balance will be $42,000. I'm gonna put that here. My required minimum cash balance is 10,000. And then my interest rate is 3%. And you can put that in as 3% or 0.03 if you're doing that by hand or in Excel. Okay, so now I've got to figure out what to do with all this data. So in a cash budget, remember each of these columns, excuse me, represents a quarter. And then this final column is the year column. And again, with like the last assignment, some of these columns will add across and some of them we will not. So let's just start quarter 1. They gave me my beginning cash balance was 42,000. Now, if you'll remember, the beginning cash balance for the year is the same as the beginning cash balance of the first quarter. So I'm going to put that 42,000 over there. Okay, what's next? Total cash receipts. Okay, they gave me all of those. And so I'm just going to reference quarter 1 cash receipts of 290,000, quarter 2 of 440,000, quarter 3, 320,000, and quarter 4, 340,000. So this line is going to total across. So I will just add those across to get my total cash receipts for the year. So you see that this one, I can add them across. This one, it's not. It's going to be the beginning, and then down at the bottom when we get to the ending, it will be the same as the ending balance for quarter 4. But we're not there yet. Okay. Total cash available. So we just need to add those two together. This one plus this one. Okay. Now, even though I don't have the beginning cash balance yet, I'm going to drag that formula across so that I can make Excel do my work, but we'll get there eventually, I promise. All right, total cash disbursements. They told me that as well. 337,000 for quarter one, 307,000 for quarter two, 297,000 for quarter three, and 317,000 for quarter four. So if you'll notice, actually, okay, I am going to do this one because we are going to add these right here. It is not the sum of this. That would be a whole lot of money, and that's not right. So it's the sum of these two is the total cash available for the year. Okay, you see that? That has to be added this way, not this way on a total. But total cash disbursements, this is all the money we paid out for the year. That one does sum across. So I will add those across. Okay. Excess or deficiency of cash is simply going to be this number minus this number. And already you can see this is a negative $5,000. So that's not cool, but we'll get there. So I'm going to drag that across there. And then again in this one, we're going to take this minus this up and down in this total column, just to be sure. Okay. Now on to our financing. So if you'll recall, they want my ending cash balance for each quarter to be at least $10,000. And if it's not at least $10,000, then I need to borrow enough money that my ending cash balance will be $10,000. So if I am already $5,000 in the hole, I need to borrow $5,000 plus what they want my ending cash balance to be. Nope, that was not right. Let's try that again. Not $5, $5,000. There we go. That's better. Okay, so I need to borrow $15,000 so that, let's see, here's my total financing. I'm going to sum these numbers, even though there's no numbers there, just because in future columns there could be. And I'm going to drag that formula across just because I can. Okay, so now in this ending cash balance, we will take the excess or deficiency of cash plus what we borrowed. And there's my $10,000 that they wanted me to borrow. Okay, so if you'll recall, I told you before, the ending cash balance for one quarter or month or whatever period they're talking about, this ending cash balance then becomes the beginning cash balance of the following quarter or month. Okay, see that? So that 10,000 goes up here. And then I have my total cash receipts from that I put in there before. And I add those two numbers together to get my total cash available. And they told me my total cash disbursement. And so it's going to be the total cash available minus the disbursements equals my excess or deficiency of cash. So suddenly I have $142,000. And so I am going to repay, whoops, equals a negative $15,000 because I'm repaying it. Now I owe some interest on this. And we need to be really careful because I owe for quarter one and I owe for quarter two. So I owe 2 times. Okay, so I am going to take this 15, actually I'm going to do parentheses just because I can. That 15,000 I borrowed times 3%. And actually, I'm going to times it by the negative one because it needs to be a negative number. Okay, so that gives me 1 month's interest, right? 3% of 15,000, but I need 2 months. So I'm going to times that by 2. So the amount I borrowed times the interest rate in parentheses and then times 2. So it's $900. And again, it's interest that I owe that I'm repaying, and so it is a negative. So my total financing is negative $15,900. Now, again, I'm going to take the excess or deficiency of cash, and I'm going to add the negative number, which will really subtract it. And so I have $127,100. And again, this ending cash balance becomes the beginning cash balance of the next quarter. And so I put that there, and there's my receipts. Add those together. Here's my disbursements. And so again, we take the total cash available minus the total disbursements. Disbursement just means we paid it. So my total here is a lot more than $10,000. And so I didn't have to borrow any more money. And so this will be this plus this because there's nothing there. So I'm actually going to drag that one more time. And that total will be right in just a minute because if you'll recall, I need to move this amount of money up to the beginning of quarter four. So equals this one from quarter three. Ending cash balance becomes beginning cash balance. There's my receipts. Add those two together. Here's my disbursements. Subtract. Take this one minus this one. And I've got $173,100. And so it's well above 10,000. So I didn't have to borrow anything else. So my ending cash balance should be 173,100. So we're going to see if I do this right in this column. So my borrowings for the year will be the sum of all of these, which is just one number. And then same for this one. It's going to be the sum of these. So it's negative 15,000. And then same for this one. It's the sum across of these. So it's negative 900. And so my total financing will be the sum of those three numbers. So it's negative 900, right? Because I borrowed 15,000 and then I paid it back. And then it's my interest. And so then I'm just going to take my excess or deficiency of cash for the year. And I'm going to add this negative 900, which really subtracts it. And I come up with that same number, 173,100. So just as long as you remember that your interest is for 2 quarters, you should be good to go on this one. Okay. Now, question 2. I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger so that it's easy for you guys to see what I'm doing. Okay. So a cash budget by quarters is given below for the retail company, and the thousands are omitted. So that just means when you see a 7, they mean 7,000, but we're just going to deal with the beginning number. So this would really be 74,000. And so Again, we've got quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, quarter four, and that final column is our year column. The company requires a minimum cash balance of at least $8,000 to start each quarter. So this is very similar to the previous problem. They've just taken the zeros off for us. And we have to fill in the missing amounts. So at first, this looks like a really bad game of Sudoku, but it's not. We can do this. So the very first thing I'm going to do is, if you'll recall, the beginning cash balance of quarter one is the beginning cash balance of the year. So for mine, it's 7. Okay. The next thing I can figure out is quarter one collection from customers, because I know the cash balance beginning plus the collections equals the total cash available. So if I do a little reverse engineering, then total cash available minus the cash balance beginning has to equal the collections from the customer. Okay, so far so good. Let me think what's next. This one's a little tricky because, okay, so I know that in the end, my excess or deficiency of cash is -5. So here's my cash available, and whatever all this is, my disbursement is 5 more than what I had available, right? Because I'm in the hole, a -5. And so if I take that 5, so I did a negative and then reference this cell, so that would make it a +5. So I'm taking 5 plus the total cash available. That gives me my total disbursements, okay? Because if I disperse 79 and I only had 74, I end up with -5. So that's how I know that is right, because 74 minus 79 equals -5. And that's how I figured that one out. Okay, now that I know my total disbursements, I can figure out what this selling and administrative expense is, because I know all these expenses added together equals my total disbursement. So if I just do a little bit of reverse, where I take total disbursements minus purchase of inventory, minus equipment purchases, minus dividends, what's left over has to be my selling and administrative expenses. And then you can double check your numbers by adding all 4 of these numbers together and see if you come up with your total disbursement number. Okay, so now I know I'm going to have to borrow money, because I need to have at least $8,000 to start each quarter, and I'm sitting on -5. And so I need to borrow 5 plus 8. So I need to borrow enough to cover this 5 or 5,000 plus the 8,000 that they want to have. So I need to borrow 13. So my total financing equals the sum of those two numbers, which the one is nothing, so it's just 13. So now, if I take this plus, so my excess or deficiency of cash plus my total financing, I get 8. Okay, so now I know my ending cash balance. So that tells me my beginning quarter 2 is 8. Okay, There's a lot of blank numbers here, but I know that these, let's see, disbursements, I had 94 disbursements, or 94,000 disbursements, and I had to borrow 14,000. And I know I have to be 8,000 here. And so, let's see, which one's next? So I know that this has to be 8, whoops, equals 8 minus 14. So it's -6 because that 8 was the 8,000, right? That I need to have. And I borrowed this much. So I borrowed this much. Anyway, -6. And so I had to borrow the 6 plus 8,000 to get to 14. Okay. So if I know that my total disbursements were 94 and I had to borrow 6,000, that means my total cash available is 6,000 less than what I dispersed. So you see how I got that? My total disbursements were put me in the hole $6,000. And so I only had 6,000 less than 94, which is 88. Okay, so now we're completely working backwards here. Now I can figure out the collections for customers because I know this plus this equals this. So then in reverse, total cash available minus beginning cash equals collections from customers. Okay, and then my total financing was the sum of those two numbers. And then my ending cash balance is excess of deficiency of cash plus the borrowing, or in other words, subtracting, because that's a negative. So my ending cash balance for Q2 is $8,000. And again, ending cash balance becomes beginning cash balance of the next month. So equals 8 right there. All right, and I know this plus this equals total cash available. So I can add those two together. Okay. Let's see. Let's just okay. So I know that this 15 right here and the excess or deficiency of cash available. Oh, let me rephrase. So I know that my total cash available minus my total disbursements equals excess or deficiency of cash. And so I know that I can reverse engineer this and take my 109 minus my excess or deficiency of cash, and that is going to give me what's left over has to be my total disbursements. And so to check that, 109 minus 94 equals 15. Okay, so I have 15 or 15,000. I have to have at least 8,000 at the end, but I have enough that I could pay back some of what I borrowed, right? And so 15 minus, or let's see, let's go 8 minus my excess or deficiency of cash. I'm going to pay back 7. And we will just sum. Okay. So for now, that's what that is. For whatever reason on this one, they're not having you worry about interest in the intermediary. And so we're just going to do cash balance ending is this minus this, and that's 8. So again, Q4 beginning is the same as Q3 ending of 8. Okay. Now Q4 gets a little tricky, but we can do this. So on at collections from customers, that is one of the lines where we do add across, right? And so we know that this plus this plus this plus this equals the year balance. And so I can take the year balance and subtract Q1, Q2, and Q3. And what's left over has to be Q4. And then I can add those. So add those two together and I get my Q4 total cash available. All right. Oh, I missed one right here. How did I do that? Okay, sorry. Let's go back one step. I forgot to do this one right here. So this one, we know that purchase of inventory plus selling and administrative plus equipment purchases plus dividend equals total disbursements. So again, we'll just reverse. We'll take total disbursements minus selling administrative minus equipment minus dividends, and what's left over has to be purchase of inventory. Okay, sorry I skipped that one, but all of these others are still okay. Okay, so now again, this purchase of inventory is one that we add across for the year column. So we will just add Q1, 2, 3, and 4 together. Gives us 169. Okay, and again, selling and administrative expenses is one that gets added across. So to find Q4, we will take the total for the year and minus Q1, minus Q2, minus Q3. Oh, whoops. Yeah. Okay. And so what's left over has to be the selling and administrative for Q4. One more time for equipment purchases, same thing. And so it's the year total minus Q1 minus Q2 minus Q3 equals what's left over, and that has to be Q4's equipment purchases. Dividends, that is another one that we can sum across. And so we just add those together, and that equals 8 for our year total. Okay, total disbursements. Q4, this one right here, is going to be the sum of all of the disbursements. Okay, so that gives us 68. So total disbursements, that's how much we paid out all year. That one does get summed across or added across. So we will add Q1, 2, 3, and 4 to get the year total there. Okay, so now I can, oh, I missed one. Total cash available. I need to add those two. So my 7 plus my 345 is my total cash available. Okay. So now going up and down in this year column, I can take my total cash available minus my total disbursements. And that equals the excess or deficiency of cash available for the year. Now, if I can explain this right. Okay. That. Oh, okay. Now I remember. Um, so again, excess of deficiency of cash available, that is the total cash available minus the total disbursements. So, okay, so there, now I've got quarter four, I've got the year, it's just the total cash available minus the total disbursements. That equals my excess or deficiency of cash available. Okay, now they're showing me right here that I paid back. This was a number that was given to me, that I paid back 21. So my total financing is equal to that. Okay, so now my cash balance ending is going to be my excess or deficiency of cash minus that payment. So I have 16. Okay, so this is a really important number to look at because that ending balance of cash for quarter four, the ending, is going to be the same as the ending year cash balance. But I'm going to not fill that in yet because I want to make sure that as I add and subtract across, that I'm doing the math right. So these two numbers will be the same eventually. So on my borrowings, that is added across. So there's 2, so 27. This is also added across. So negative 21 and negative 7 equals 28. Total financing is also added across. So it's a positive 13, a positive 14, a negative 7, a negative 21, and that leaves me with a negative 1, which if you notice down here, interest will total 1,000 for the year. So I did that correctly. As long as this number is 1, or I mean negative 1, that is my interest for the year. So it's 1,000 because they took the 3 zeros off. So now equals my excess or deficiency of cash minus my interest equals 16, which is my cash balance ending for quarter four. And I have the right number, and so I did it right.